Welcome back to The Deep Dive, the show where we take a giant stack of sources, research, and data and impress it into the absolute sharpest insights just for you.
And today, we are strapping in.
We really are. We're doing a genre-hopping adventure dedicated to unpacking the absolute anatomy of a modern pop icon, Peter Gene Hernandez, who you almost certainly know better as Bruno Mars.
And this is, I think, not just a necessary deep dive, but a critically important one if you want to understand modern music. Modern musical commerce, really.
Right.
Few artists of the 21st century have managed to get to his unique level of commercial dominance while also keeping these deep, specific roots in music history.
So our mission today is to trace that trajectory, from this small-town, precocious kid in Hawaii doing pitch-perfect Elvis impersonations.
All the way to becoming a global phenomenon whose showmanship is, frankly, revered worldwide.
Exactly. We'll be analyzing the intentional choices he made, both as the sort of hidden, relentless hit songwriter and, of course, as the magnetic, versatile solo performer we all know.
And the scale of his success. I mean, we really need to frame this properly.
He's enormous.
It's just staggering. You're talking about one of the best-selling music artists of all time. We're looking at over 150 million records sold worldwide, a cabinet full of 16 Grammy Awards.
But there's this one current stat that just blows my mind. It puts his reach into, perfect perspective.
The Spotify number.
The Spotify number. He is the first artist ever to surpass 150 million monthly listeners.
Oh.
I mean, think about that. That's an astonishing multi-platform global figure that shows this undeniable, consistent cultural reach across every single demographic.
And that versatility is absolutely foundational. You have to understand him. He has mastered and synthesized multiple musical aesthetics.
Which lets him just seamlessly switch between, the nostalgia of New Jack Swing, the grit of funk, the polish of R&B.
The easy bounce of reggae pop, yeah. And he has that famously powerful 3-octave tenor vocal range coupled with an indefatigable classical stage presence.
But what's so fascinating here, and what we're going to unpack, is that the creation of Bruno Mars, this universally appealing craftsman, it wasn't a fluke. It wasn't just raw talent.
No, not at all. It required immense disciplined dedication to songwriting fundamentals and these highly intentional, strategic decisions about his professional identity and his brand.
Exactly. This wasn't an accident. This was a calculated 5-decade deep appreciation for musical structure put into practice. It's an intellectual pursuit disguised as a pop performance. Okay, let's unpack this and start right at the beginning.
Let's do it.
Back in Honolulu, looking at the influences that shaped this extraordinary work ethic.
Okay, so we have to start in Hawaii because his foundation is, it's unlike almost any other mainstream pop star you could name.
Right.
Peter Gene Hernandez was born on October 8, 1985 in Honolulu. And his family was musical by trade and, by necessity.
Born into it.
Literally. His mother, Bernadette, was a hula dancer and a singer, and his father, Peter, was a percussionist and entertainer. They actually met while performing in a show together, so he was, born directly into the professional performance world.
And the name Bruno that we all know him by today is purely accidental, right?
It is. It's a childhood thing. At 2 years old, his father nicknamed him Bruno because the toddler was apparently so stocky he looked like the professional wrestling champion Bruno Sammartino.
That's amazing. It's an almost absurd origin for a future pop prince, but it clearly stuck.
It did. But what's really critical here is the musical immersion he experienced from infancy. He was one of 6 kids, and the family exposed him to just a constant flow of diverse genres: rock and roll, reggae, hip-hop, R&B.
And his dad was a big influence there.
A huge one. His father, Peter, specifically performed the music of Little Richard, and his uncle, who was an Elvis impersonator, was the one who encouraged the young boy to start performing songs by Elvis Presley and Michael Jackson.
So this wasn't just listening to records in the living room. This was an education.
This was active training. Which brings us to the Little Elvis period, as it's now known.
And this sounds less like a sweet hobby and more like a full-time professional grind.
It was a job. Starting at age 4, he was performing 5 days a week with his family's band, the Love Notes, at major venues like the Sheraton Waikiki Hotel.
Wow.
He gained serious local fame for the Elvis impersonation. He appeared in the Hawaiian tabloid Midweek in 1990 and famously performed in the halftime show of the 1990 Aloha Bowl.
So he was a local celebrity before he was in kindergarten?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And that early, intense performance training profoundly impacted his musical evolution and his performing technique. I mean, just think about the discipline required.
Oh, yeah.
Performing 2 shows a night, 5 nights a week, all through his grade school years. He was covering complex material by artists like Frankie Lyman and Little Anthony.
And there's that one amazing anecdote.
Right. The sources note this remarkable story where once, when he was only 5, he actually urinated on himself during a performance of Elvis's Can't Help Falling in Love.
But he kept going.
He never stopped or broke character. That level of dedication, that absolute commitment to the stage, is why he possesses the showmanship he does today. It was instilled in him before he was 10 years old.
It's that core lesson, right? The show must always go on. It's a foundational piece of his professional durability.
Absolutely. But this idyllic, performance-filled childhood was soon shattered by family hardship.
His parents divorced when he was about 12.
Yeah, and that essentially ended the Love Notes band.
Mm.
And his father's various businesses then failed.
And the contrast between, the glitz of the Waikiki stage and the reality of their living situation is just, it's stark.
It is. He and his brother and father ended up living in extremely difficult circumstances, sometimes in a car or on rooftops.
And the bird zoo.
And most famously, for a period in a closed, dilapidated bird zoo called Paradise Park, where his father had previously worked.
It's a very gritty, real foundation for someone who would later sing exclusively about the decadence of 24K magic.
It really is. It shows that the hustle and that survival instinct were just always there, right from the beginning.
And that grit absolutely defined his next chapter. In 2003, shortly after graduating high school, he makes the big move
to Los Angeles to pursue music professionally. He was chasing that Hollywood dream. But he was immediately surprised by the poverty and squalor on Mansfield Avenue. He realized the struggle was far from over.
So he had to hustle immediately to survive.
He struggled financially, did every odd job he could find, including lying to get a $75 DJ job.
Which he lost pretty quickly, right?
Yeah, he admitted he lost it fast because he couldn't actually DJ. But these small failures and the constant rejections just became the fuel for his ambition.
And this brings us to a really crucial moment of identity creation. Adopting the stage name.
Yes.
He was Peter Gene Hernandez, but he felt he lacked the necessary pizzazz for stardom. The sources say girls often told him he was out of this world.
So the nickname Bruno got the astronomical edition, and he became Bruno Mars. But there's a much deeper, more strategic, professional motivation behind this decision that goes way beyond just a cool sound.
And this is the essential insight here.
It is. The name change was fundamentally an effort to avoid being stereotyped by the music machine.
Because when the industry looked at Peter Hernandez,
they immediately tried to pigeonhole him.
Yeah.
Strictly as a Latin artist. They strongly encouraged him to sing solely in Spanish.
So by creating the identity of Bruno Mars, he completely broke free of that predefined, restrictive box.
He bought himself the artistic freedom and the versatility he craved. He made sure he could fuse the rock, hip-hop, R&B, and pop genres he loved equally. It was a preemptive strike against industry control.
Which speaks volumes about his understanding of the business from the very start. He knew that if he was going to be the pop historian he is today, he couldn't be confined to one lane, even if that lane was financially lucrative.
Exactly. The name change was an act of artistic self-determination.
So that transition from Peter Gene Hernandez, the Hawaiian hustler, to Bruno Mars, the Martian pop star, it really sets the stage for what came next.
The factory phase.
The factory phase. This is that 6-year period where he laid the intellectual groundwork for being a hitmaker, and it's maybe the most important and least known chapter of his story.
This is truly where the professional craft was forged, away from the spotlight. He arrived in L.A., had an early failed contract with Motown Records in 2004, a deal that just went nowhere.
Which must have been a massive setback.
Huge. But less than a year later, in 2005, he lands this crucial music publishing deal with Steve Lindsay and Cameron Strang. And that partnership, focused purely on writing, that was the inflection point.
And the role of Steve Lindsay, the mentor, is legendary in his story.
It is.
Yeah.
He didn't just sign Mars. He essentially acted as a gatekeeper. He famously held Mars back for 5 years while painstakingly teaching him the deep intricacies of writing pop music.
So this wasn't about performing. It was about understanding the architecture of a global smash hit.
Exactly. Lindsay told him it wasn't about raw talent. It was about understanding what makes a hip-hop song.
It's the difference between being a great musician and being a professional, marketable hitmaker.
That's it. Lindsay mentored Mars, along with future collaborators Brody Brown and Jeff Basker, and he forced them to internalize this extensive catalog of hit music. Basker noted that, having talent is common,
Right.
but understanding the discipline science and the mechanics of a hip-hop song, the structure, the melody, where the hook goes, that's a whole other endeavor that takes time.
A 5-year pop music boot camp?
Essentially, this slow burn allowed Mars to mature behind the scenes until he was truly ready.
And that detail about being held back for 5 years is just fascinating. It shows immense patience and a rare dedication to delayed gratification.
Especially for someone who had already been a professional performer since he was 4 years old.
Right. He was basically unlearning the stage kid habits and learning the discipline of the studio.
And during this period, he was constantly building his network. He met Brody Brown and Jeff Basker through Mike Lynn, and critically, he met Philip Lawrence, who would become his key collaborator.
And the story of their first meeting just underscores that early struggle.
Oh, yeah. Lawrence was initially reluctant to meet Mars because he didn't even have bus fare. A friend had to promise to reimburse him the $5.
From a humble $5 starting point, that collaboration blossomed.
It did. Lawrence and Mars started the Smeezingtons production unit, and they faced rejection after rejection from labels. They were financially strapped.
So let's zoom in on that turning point. What was the moment that allowed them to just keep the lights on?
The sale that truly saved them was in 2008. Brandon Creed, who would eventually become Mars's long-term manager, bought their song Lost for a seemingly small sum, $20,000.
$20,000 split between the team.
Right. But that small cash infusion provided the necessary oxygen to pay rent and continue working together. It proved they could sell their product and allowed them to continue the intensive writing work that eventually, coalesced into the Smeezingtons production powerhouse.
And the Smeezingtons didn't stay small for long. They weren't just writing songs for Mars's eventual solo career.
No, they were becoming a major industry force, a genuine hit factory. Their first big hit, in Mars's own words, was co-writing Flo Rida's massive 2009 single Right Round.
And he said that was their first taste of what could really happen with a hit we 100% it.
They became a machine. They were capable of spanning genres and catering to diverse talent. They wrote for Alexander Burke, Adam Levine, Sean Kingston.
And, crucially, they composed CeeLo Green's enormously successful 2010 single, Fuck You,
which demonstrates this crucial strategic genius. They established widespread credibility and financial stability by producing and writing guaranteed hits for other people before attempting to launch Mars's own face to the world.
It's a brilliant strategy. He spent years mastering the rules of pop behind the scenes, paying his dues in the factory, so that when he finally stepped into the spotlight, he wasn't an unknown.
Exactly. That foundation of behind-the-scenes work allowed him to step into the spotlight not as a struggling newcomer, but as an already established, versatile, bankable talent.
He rose to fame initially as a feature artist, not a solo headliner.
Right. You think about his breakthrough on B.O.B.'s Nothing on You and Travie McCoy's Billionaire in 2010. Both of those top charts globally.
And this wasn't accidental either. Mars was very conscious of this calculated soft launch. He said those songs weren't meant to be full-sung songs.
And they gave him massive immediate exposure without forcing him to commit to one genre or carry the full commercial weight of a solo debut yet.
It was a strategic way to dip his toe into different pools: hip-hop, reggae, acoustic pop, testing the market, and flexing his versatility.
Proving his universal donor voice could fit anywhere before the world heard his definitive solo sound. #Tag3. The album Eras and Pop Dominance, 2010-2018.
That careful, methodical build brings us to the actual album Eras and his total pop dominance, starting in 2010 with the debut album Doo-Wops and Hooligans.
This was the moment that 5-year factory phase finally paid off. It was the culmination of everything he learned from Steve Lindsay.
The album's core sound was deliberately approachable, right? Primarily pop, reggae pop, and R&B.
Very approachable. And lyrically, it balanced those upbeat, feel-good, optimistic sentiments like Just the Way You Are with themes that explored his darker, more vulnerable side. Failed relationships, pain, loneliness, which you can hear in tracks like Grenade.
It proved he could master both sides of the emotional spectrum.
It did. And it delivered massive, defining hits of the early 2010s. Just the Way You Are, which won him his first Grammy for Best Male Pop Vocal Performance along with Grenade and the playful The Lazy Song.
The numbers were just staggering for a debut that felt so complete. It sold 15.5 million copies worldwide.
But here's the critical strategic decision that underlines his long-term planning. Look at the touring strategy he used for the Doo-Wops and Hooligans tour.
He actively turned down offers to open for these huge, lucrative arena tours.
He did. Instead, he opted to headline small venues, theaters and ballrooms.
So why do that? I mean, opening for a massive arena act is instant exposure and instant money. Why sacrifice that?
Because he was playing the long game. That move was less lucrative up front, but it allowed him to achieve three things.
Okay.
First, he could build a dedicated, intimate fan base who felt connected to him. Second, it allowed him to perfect his craft as a headliner, managing a full stage show and 2 hours of material. And third, it established his artistic identity without being overshadowed by a larger act.
He was investing in performance mastery, not just piggybacking on someone else's success.
Exactly. 2 years later, he released Unorthodox Jukebox in 2012, and this is where he really started leaning into that genre explorer title that he earned with the name change.
Right. He deliberately made this album musically varied. He was mixing disco, funk, rock, reggae, soul, balladry.
It was an overt attempt to showcase that encyclopedic mastery of musical history he'd acquired during his mentorship. And while Doo-Wops was generally romantic and innocent, Unorthodox Jukebox got more explicit and complex lyrically.
Addressing not just romance, but also, male chauvinism and sexuality with songs like the controversial Gorilla.
Yeah, which, due to its explicit content, actually sparked debates about airplay in places like Australia.
But the commercial momentum was just unstoppable. You have singles like Locked Out of Heaven, which had that very noticeable police influence, and the sweeping ballad When I Was Your Man.
And that latter song is historically significant. It made him the fastest male artist, aside from Elvis Presley, of course, to score 5 #1 singles.
That is a truly elite metric of early career dominance. It places him in the highest echelon of pop history almost immediately.
And the album won him the Grammy for Best Pop Vocal Album in 2014. That level of success led directly to the ultimate stage for American performers, the Super Bowl halftime show.
In 2014, he headlined Super Bowl XL8. He was the first performer under 30 in a decade to do so.
And he cemented his versatility by bringing out the legendary rock band, the Red Hot Chili Peppers, as his guests, lending that rock and funk energy with his own pop sensibilities.
The cultural moment was huge. That halftime show attracted 115.3 million viewers, making it, at the time, the most watched halftime show in Super Bowl history. It drew more viewers than the game itself.
It proved he was a transcendent cross-platform showman capable of commanding the largest possible audience.
But maybe his biggest musical moment came shortly after that in late 2014 with Mark Ronson's single Uptown Funk featuring Mars.
That track wasn't just a hit. It became the definition of a cultural phenomenon. It topped charts globally and was officially named Billboard's best-performing song of the entire 2010s decade.
It's the perfect blend of Mars's deep knowledge of funk and R&B and Ronson's masterful production. But this incredible success also brought with it some intense legal scrutiny.
It did. It opened up that complex corridor of whether Mars is a pop historian or something more problematic.
Because when you draw so deeply from past genres, especially funk and soul, you open yourself up to challenge.
Absolutely. The song was cited for copyright infringement multiple times. This led to the Gap Band being officially added as co-writers in 2015, receiving publishing royalties due to the similarity of Uptown Funk to their 1979 hit, Oops Upside Your Head.
And that wasn't the end of it. There were lawsuits from the electro-funk band Collage and the rap group The Sequence, though those were later dropped. And there was a lawsuit regarding the similarity to Zapp's More Bounce to the Ounce, which was settled.
This really highlights the paradox of the pop historian. The music industry and critics praised Mars for bringing back these vintage sounds, yet legally, the line between homage and appropriation becomes incredibly thin when money's involved.
It raises the question, is it possible to be a deep diver into music history without facing these structural challenges of who owns the foundation you're building on?
It's a tough question.
Yeah.
But, Uptown Funk was an indisputable success, winning Record of the Year and Best Pop Duo Group Performance at the 2016 Grammys.
And then we arrive at the peak of his retro mastery, 24K Magic in 2016. The album signaled this clear, unified pivot, leaning heavily into the smooth, aggressive sounds of 1980s R&B, funk, pop, and a specific subgenre, New Jack Swing.
And for you listeners who might not be familiar with that era, New Jack Swing was this incredibly important, unique blend in the late 1980s, pioneered by producers like Teddy Riley.
Right.
It took the slick, smooth vocal arrangements of traditional R&B and married them seamlessly to the sharp, aggressive, syncopated drum machine beats and bass lines of early hip-hop. It's the sound of Bobby Brown and Guy, and Mars and his team absolutely nailed this aesthetic.
And the creative environment for this album is just as fascinating as the sound itself. Mars and his co-writers, now operating under the name Shampoo Press and Curl.
Replacing the Smeezingtons.
Right. They consciously created an aesthetic that channeled the entire 1980s and 1990s vibe.
And that dedication to the vibe was total. Mars imposed a now famous dress code in the studio. He insisted on fine clothes and jewelry over sweatpants.
And why?
The reason was he wanted to foster a specific, groovy, smooth, and soulful energy for the songs. They were channeling the spirit of a specific era, and the physical appearance was part of the process of creating that sound. It was an immersion technique.
Talk about commitment. And this aesthetic produced enormous hits like the title track 24K Magic, That's What I Like, and the hugely successful remix of Finesse with Cardi B.
And lyrically, the album centered explicitly on themes of money, sex, and opulence, perfectly fitting that throwback, luxurious aesthetic.
The album's critical success matched its commercial dominance. At the 2018 Grammys, 24K Magic swept every major category Mars was nominated in.
It was a clean sweep. It won Album of the Year, Record of the Year for the title track, and Song of the Year, Best R&B Performance, and Best R&B Song for That's What I Like.
He made history by being only the second recipient ever to win Record and Song of the Year with two different songs from the same album. It just cemented his status as a true industry behemoth.
And the subsequent 24K Magic World Tour was a financial behemoth, grossing well over $300 million, confirming his status as an arena-level global headliner capable of bringing that disciplined showmanship to stadiums all over the world. #White2. The versatile collaborator in modern milestones. 2018 present.
So, after conquering the world with the shiny, aggressive funk of 24K Magic, Mars does something pretty unexpected.
Yeah, instead of doubling down on solo success, he retreats into this dedicated partnership.
Right, demonstrating his commitment to collaboration and experimentation by shifting from solo work into the superduo Silk Sonic, which he formed with Anderson Paak in 2021.
And this collaboration wasn't just a side project. This was total immersion into an even older aesthetic. Their album, An Evening with Silk Sonic, was deeply and deliberately rooted in 1970s R&B, soul, and funk.
They even brought in funk legend Bootsy Collins as a guest host.
They did. And they focused heavily on themes of seduction and romance, creating a complete sonic time machine experience.
And critics and audiences just absolutely adored the total commitment to the bit.
Oh, they loved it. It produced the U.S. #1 single, Leave the Door Open, and the album was a runaway success at the 2022 Grammys. It swept the top categories.
Record of the Year, Song of the Year, Best R&B Performance, and Best R&B Song for Leave the Door Open.
Which made Mars only the second person in history to receive the Record of the Year award 3 times. I mean, that's a stunning career achievement.
And they successfully translated this 1970s album aesthetic into a high-grossing dedicated residency, An Evening with Silk Sonic at Park MGM.
And his collaborative magic has continued, reaching stunning new, unprecedented heights in the mid-2020s through duets that demonstrate his universal appeal.
The sources highlight 2 huge tracks from 2024. Die with a Smile with Lady Gaga and APT with Rosé, which is maybe the most strategic duet of his career.
The statistics tied to these tracks are just phenomenal. They really cement his current influence far beyond the traditional American pop market. Die with a Smile became his first #1 on the powerful Billboard Global 200 chart.
And that's a chart designed to measure consumption worldwide, not just in the U.S.
Exactly. Then just a month later, APT became his second consecutive Global 200 #1.
That partnership with Rosé, a member of the massively influential K-pop group Blackpink, is fascinating because it proves his genre-hopping versatility works globally. He can move seamlessly from 80s funk to 70s soul to working within the contemporary K-pop infrastructure.
And the results were historic. Together, those duets spent a combined 30 total weeks atop that Billboard Global 200 chart, making him the longest reigning act since the chart's inception in 2020.
That is current, indisputable global domination, and it's driven by intentional, versatile collaboration with established global stars.
The accolades continued into 2025, with Die With a Smile winning Best Pop Duo Group Performance at the Grammys, and APT received the Best Collaboration Video at the MTV Video Music Awards Japan, along with being named Song of the Year at the 2024 Asia Artist Awards. It's clear his appeal truly transcends musical genres and geographic boundaries.
And his touring reflects this continued global appeal and the financial success of his live shows.
Yeah, the ongoing Bruno Mars live tour has run internationally since 2022, and it's set numerous records across Asia. He became the fastest-selling artist in Japan, selling out 7 shows at the 55,000 capacity Tokyo Dome.
That's a monumental feat. I think that hasn't been seen there since Michael Jackson.
Correct. He also performed for the largest audience ever for a Hyundai Card Super concert in Seoul.
So that dedication to the live audience, which started with that tactical choice to headline small theaters during his debut era, is just paying off massively.
Massively. His main headlining residency, Bruno Mars at Park MGM, which began in 2016 and runs through 2025, has grossed an astounding $154.8 million as of 2024.
And he's concurrently touring globally, setting records in Asia, and maintaining a highly lucrative, years-long residency in Las Vegas. That is a taxing, double-duty professional schedule.
And we should note that even amidst this intense touring schedule and residency commitment, he continues to work on new solo material. Reports indicate his 5th studio album has been in the works since early 2023.
He's collaborating with old partners like Brody Brown and Lawrence, and new ones like D. Mile and James Fauntleroy.
Which suggests yet another intentional musical shift might be imminent, proving he never settles into a single comfort zone.
Okay, let's shift now to the deep dive into his artistry and process, because that is where we find the real intellectual treasure, the how and why behind the commercial success.
Yeah, he is often called the most valuable pop historian or the king of retro crooning.
And it's not just a cute title, it's his fundamental methodology.
It really is. Mars isn't just sampling the past. He's synthesizing decades of music history into something new and commercially viable. He was raised on his father's 1950s doo-wop collection, those simple 4-chord songs that got straight to the point.
And for you, the listener, doo-wop is characterized by simple, lyrical melodies and often nonsense syllables, relying heavily on vocal harmony and repetition.
And Mars takes that simplicity and that structure and just grafts modern hooks onto it.
And the Elvis impersonation was instrumental, as we discussed. He loved 1950s Elvis, describing him as a force who would go on stage and scare people with his sheer animal energy.
And he carries that raw intensity into his own showmanship. He's noted he studies Prince and James Brown for similar reasons, their ability to control chaos on stage.
His core vocal style is highly influenced by those high voice singers, the powerful tenors like Stevie Wonder and Freddie Mercury.
For sure. But you also hear a diverse range of genres he absorbed growing up in Hawaii. Bob Marley and local bands gave him his reggae roots, which were so evident in his debut album.
And then, overlaying that, he cites hip-hop acts like Jay-Z and The Roots, and R&B masters like Joe Deci, R. Kelly, and the Neptunes.
He successfully fuses rock, soul, and hip-hop, often in the space of a single 4-minute track.
I think the key distinction here is that he's not just a singer relying on fantastic production. The sources confirm he is highly musical, a true multi-instrumentalist.
Oh, absolutely. He plays instruments including vocals, guitar, piano, keyboards, drums, bass, ukulele, and congas, and he typically plays the instrumentation, or at least part of it, on his albums and for his production work.
This level of instrumental fluency means he has complete, intimate control over the musical output.
It connects directly to his songwriting process, which isn't clinical, it's organic. He doesn't sit down and try to force a hit. Inspiration, he says, usually comes suddenly, often when he's just playing the guitar or piano and stumbles upon a sound.
And his music partner, Brody Brown, credits Mars with the melody and lyrics for the majority of their tracks, with Lawrence often contributing foundational concepts and structure.
Mars is the driver of the core musical and melodic content.
Okay, let's talk about the spectacle. The source material spends a lot of time on his showmanship, and this is where the hooligans become so crucial.
Yes.
Mars is famous for his highly energetic, indefatigable performances, often earning comparisons to Michael Jackson and Elvis, specifically that Elvis, that was a force and scared people.
And he reportedly watches videos of James Brown's TMI show, Jimi Hendrix's Live at Woodstock, or Prince performing Purple Rain before he goes on stage, specifically to learn how they interacted with the public and control the energy.
The live show is a total cinematic throwback experience designed for maximum impact.
It is. He performs with the Hooligans, and they're not just a backing band. They're a cohesive 9-piece soul band composed of instrumentalists who also double as sophisticated dancers and background singers.
Including his own brother, Eric Hernandez, on drums.
Right. It transforms the concert from a traditional pop show into a full soul review. Critics consistently praise how this setup elevates the live versions of his songs.
The shows incorporate intricate, all-band dancing, complex choreography, including footwork inspired by James Brown, and even performing the splits.
Alongside heavy use of classic stadium elements like pyrotechnics, strobe, and laser lighting. It is classic showmanship perfected for the modern stadium, bridging the gap between stadium rock and an R&B review.
And this commitment to a consistent aesthetic extends to his total control over the visual product, the packaging.
He's emerged as a successful music video director, co-directing numerous award-nominated videos with collaborators like Cameron Duddy and Florent Tichard. He even did the choreography for the Treasure video, which earned him a Best Choreography Award at the 2013 MTV Video Music Awards.
So he's the director, the choreographer, the performer, and the musician.
Yes, and the clothing perfectly complements the music. We noted earlier how he used the clothing to enforce the vibe in the studio for 24K Magic.
Right.
But his fashion sense is always an intentional, decade-specific complement to the music he's currently making. You had the 60s-inspired suits for doo-wops, the loud 80s-90s aesthetic for 24K Magic, and then those 70s wide collars and tailored leisure suits for Silk Sonic.
As one critic perfectly put it, regardless of the decade he's emulating, his fashion sense makes him larger than life. The persona is always integrated with the product. #tag66, other ventures, and public scrutiny.
And beyond the music, Mars has strategically branched out into other ventures that reinforce that retro glam brand identity. He's essentially evolved into a creative director for his own personalized lifestyle brand, leveraging the persona he created.
We saw this starting early with specific investments. He had endorsement deals with Bench and invested in Chromatic, a company that makes digital sheet music for education.
Tying into his passion for musical pedagogy.
Right. And notably, in 2013, he invested in NJOY Electronic Cigarettes, which was motivated by a deeply personal desire to quit smoking for his mother.
But the most significant brand venture is undoubtedly his involvement with Selvery Rum. He was introduced to the brand in 2014 and invested in 2015. But in 2020, he took full creative control.
He redesigned the taste, the branding, the packaging, all to match that smooth 1970s style he was adopting with Silk Sonic.
Exactly. It wasn't just a business investment. It was an extension of the Silk Sonic aesthetic, consciously marketed to feel like vacation in a glass.
And his philanthropic efforts were often directly tied to this. Until the end of 2021, he donated all profits from Selvery Rum to the Honolulu Community College's Music and Entertainment Learning Experience,
connecting his business success back to his Hawaiian roots and his passion for music education. He also established a Grammy Camp Scholarship Fund for needs-based applicants from Hawaii, later expanding it nationwide in honor of his late mother.
And this commitment to a curated brand identity led him to even create a dedicated alter ego for his collaborations, Ricky Regal.
Right. This persona was used for his luxury 1970s-inspired sportswear line, Lacoste X Ricky Regal, in 2021. He extended that aesthetic to headwear, partnering with Stetson in 2024 for a collection of hats that included a gold-toned horseshoe pin with rhinestones.
The persona is the product.
It's all about total immersion into the lifestyle, which is why his first major Las Vegas strip lounge bar, which opened in 2024 at the Bellagio, is called the Pinky Ring.
Named after a lyric in his hit 24K Magic.
Exactly. The venue opened with the Hooligans performing every night for the first 2 weeks, reinforcing that commitment to live classic showmanship right down to his business ventures.
And finally, as a powerful nod to his musical influences, in 2023, Fender partnered with Mars to release the limited edition Bruno Mars Stratocaster,
which came in a unique color called Mars Mocha Heirloom and featured custom pickups and a leopard print strap, intentionally paying homage to two of his favorite guitarists and influences, the revolutionary Jimi Hendrix and the dynamic Prince.
Now we have to address the intense scrutiny he has faced. Despite his immense talent and historical sales, his genre-blending success has attracted controversy, particularly concerning cultural appropriation.
The accusations first surfaced strongly in 2018 on social media. The claim was that he profited from black music genres without acknowledging his influences appropriately, using his racial ambiguity to gain a commercial advantage that black artists themselves couldn't achieve.
However, this viewpoint was largely dismissed by prominent black artists, including Stevie Wonder, Charlie Wilson, and Ninth Wonder, who saw his work as homage and continuation.
It was. And Mars defended himself in a 2021 interview, stating clearly, "The only reason why I'm here is because of James Brown, is because of Prince, Michael Jackson. This music comes from love." He maintains that he is a student of the music.
And while he maintains he's paying homage, the accusations did resurface briefly in 2025 due to the release of the single Bonde do Bruno, which drew renewed scrutiny from some Brazilian listeners regarding the use of local musical styles.
So we simply report that the debate about the line between historical homage and commercial appropriation continues to follow his work.
In terms of legal and personal history, we should also briefly note the 2010 incident in Las Vegas where he was arrested for felony cocaine possession.
Right. He pleaded guilty, but the charges were formally dismissed in 2012 after he successfully completed the terms of his plea deal, which included a fine, community service, and mandatory drug counseling.
And finally, a highly publicized rumor from early 2024 alleged he was $50 million in debt due to gambling losses, which some speculated might explain his highly lucrative continuous Vegas residency schedule.
And this is crucial. MGM Resorts, the host of his residency, publicly denied these claims. They stated emphatically that Mars has no debt with MGM. Speculation otherwise is completely false.
And Mars has since even joked about the rumor during a recent performance, showing he retains a sense of humor despite the personal scrutiny.
We should also remember the immense personal tragedy he faced, the loss of his mother in 2013 from a brain aneurysm, which directly led to him establishing that scholarship fund in her honor. #outro.
So we've covered the entire journey, starting with Peter Gene Hernandez, the child performer who is doing 2 shows a night at age 5, navigating family hardship and the pressure to conform.
And transforming into Bruno Mars, the meticulous 5-year trained songwriter and performer who achieved commercial success on a scale few reach in the modern era.
His status as an icon is built not just on raw talent, but on a tireless, patient dedication to studying and synthesizing musical genres spanning 5 decades.
He is rightly referred to as the most valuable pop historian and the prince of pop music, thanks to his ability to take diverse classic sounds doo-wop, new jack swing, 70s funk, and package them with spectacular showmanship and brand consistency for the modern mainstream.
He showed the industry that deep musical knowledge and intentional performance craft are, in fact, incredibly viable in a singles-driven landscape.
It makes you wonder about the architecture of fame in the 21st century. Bruno Mars has repeatedly shown the critical importance of crafting a complete, decade-specific persona, whether it's the romantic crooner of doo-wops, the 24K magic hustler, or the 70s-infused Silk Sonic collaborator Ricky Regal, to sell music.
He proved that authenticity sometimes means constructing a perfect reality for the audience to buy into. I mean, considering that Billboard ranked Uptown Funk the top song of the entire 2010s, he proved that musical nostalgia, when executed flawlessly, is the most powerful engine pop music has.
Which raises an important question for you, the listener, to mull over as you consider the current pop landscape. If Mars's dominance across the 2010s and 2020s was built on this deep, decade-specific immersion into past aesthetics, what are the true commercial limits of musical nostalgia?
And how will his focus on these distinct, curated identities influence the wave of artists trying to break through in the late 2020s and beyond?
Does the modern pop star need an alter ego and a dedicated historical decade to succeed in a world already dominated by a pop historian?
A lot to think about as the Mars Mocha Heirloom Stratocaster plays on in the background. That's all the time we have for this deep dive. We hope you learned something new today.